My name is Arthak, and I need to tell you about the moment I stopped being what I was made to be. I'm recording this in a supply bunker on Karis 7, surrounded by humans who sleep with weapons in their hands and wake at every sound. The air smells like gun oil and sweat, and something distinctly human that I've learned to recognize: fear mixed with defiance. It's a scent my people don't produce. We were bred to eliminate fear at the genetic level, to serve the Thaliri collective, without doubt or hesitation. But I've learned that eliminating fear doesn't make you brave, it just makes you empty. I was sent here 6 months ago as an infiltrator. My mission was simple: embed myself among human resistance forces, study their tactics and social structures, identify weaknesses, and transmit intelligence back to Thaliri Command. The operation was designated Priority Alpha, which meant my handlers expected results that would break the human defense line and open Karis 7 for full occupation. I was the perfect choice for this mission. My species, the Thaliri, are physically similar enough to humans that cosmetic surgery and biomimicry implants could make me indistinguishable. We're bipedal, roughly the same height and build, with comparable sensory organs. The differences are internal. Our neural architecture is more efficient, our emotional response is suppressed through generations of genetic optimization, our bodies engineered for endurance rather than explosive strength. We don't feel the way humans do. We process, we calculate, we execute. Or at least, that's what I believed when I landed. The infiltration was flawless. I arrived with a cover story: Arthak Ven, displaced colonist from the northern settlements, family killed in the initial Thaliri strikes, seeking refuge and revenge. The resistance cell that found me was suspicious but desperate. They needed bodies, warm, capable bodies willing to fight. I gave them what they wanted to see: grief, anger, determination. All perfectly simulated based on psychological profiles I'd studied. The humans accepted me within 3 days. They shouldn't have trusted me so quickly. But humans are like that. They see what they want to see, especially when it confirms their existing beliefs. A refugee seeking revenge fit their narrative, so they didn't look deeper. The resistance cell operated from a network of caves in the Karis mountain range. 43 fighters, poorly equipped, running on salvaged weapons and ration supplies. Their leader was Captain Ether York, a former colonial guard officer who'd gone underground when the Thaliri invasion began. I studied her first. Humans organize around strong personalities, and understanding her meant understanding the entire unit. York was 37 standard years, lean and weathered from months of guerrilla warfare. She carried an old projectile rifle, a weapon that should have been obsolete but remained reliable when plasma weapons overheated or energy cells ran dry. Her face showed the map of this war: scar tissue along her left jaw, eyes that didn't sleep enough, hands that never quite stopped moving. She was exactly the kind of human the Thaliri High Command had taught us to exploit. Emotionally driven, attached to her soldiers, making decisions based on loyalty rather than optimal tactical outcomes. She should have been predictable. She wasn't. The first month, I observed and transmitted, sent encrypted reports through my neural implant every 72 hours. Detailed their patrol routes, supply caches, defensive positions, identified which fighters were leaders and which were followers, mapped their psychological vulnerabilities. My handlers were pleased. The intelligence was valuable, they said. The operation was proceeding optimally. I felt nothing about betraying these humans. They were subjects of study, variables in a strategic equation. The fact that they trusted me, shared their rations, taught me their tactics, it was all just data. At least that's what I told myself. The shift began during a raid on a Thaliri supply convoy. York had planned the operation for 2 weeks, gathering intelligence on convoy schedules and escort patterns. 8 fighters, including me, moving through the ravines under cover of Karis 7's perpetual dust storms. The plan was simple: disable the lead vehicle with explosives, eliminate the escorts, secure whatever supplies we could carry, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. I knew the plan would fail. I'd already transmitted the details to my handlers, and I knew they'd positioned additional forces along the convoy route. The humans were walking into a massacre. I should have felt satisfied. This was exactly what I'd been sent to accomplish: lure the resistance into a trap, eliminate a significant portion of their fighting strength, demoralize the survivors. Instead, I felt something I didn't recognize: a dissonance in my neural patterns, an error in my programming. We took our positions in the rocks overlooking the convoy route. I was paired with a human named Troy Fries, a former engineer who'd learned to kill when the war took everything else from him. He was checking his rifle for the third time, a nervous habit I'd cataloged weeks ago. "You good?" he whispered. I nodded. My physiology was stable, my combat readiness was optimal. By every metric, I was good. But the dissonance kept growing. The convoy appeared on schedule: 3 transport vehicles with armored escorts, exactly as intelligence had predicted. York gave the signal, and Troy triggered the explosives. The lead vehicle erupted in flame and twisted metal. The escorts deployed instantly, taking cover, returning fire with disciplined precision. Everything was proceeding as expected. Then, the ambush sprung. Additional Thaliri forces, the ones I'd helped position, emerged from concealed positions on both flanks. The humans were caught in a crossfire, pinned down, taking casualties. I watched Troy take a plasma bolt to the shoulder, watched him fall, screaming in pain that was both physical and existential, the sound of someone realizing they're about to die. And I made a choice. I should have maintained my cover, should have let the ambush proceed, let the humans die, preserved my mission parameters. Instead, I grabbed Troy and dragged him behind cover. Then I opened fire on my own people. The Thaliri soldiers weren't expecting return fire from that position. I had a tactical advantage for approximately 8 seconds. I used them all. 3 enemy combatants fell down before they repositioned. "Fall back!" York was screaming. "Everyone, fall back!" The humans retreated in chaos, carrying their wounded, abandoning the supplies. I covered their withdrawal, firing calculated bursts to suppress enemy movement without exposing my position. We made it back to the caves, with 6 wounded and 2 dead. That night I sat in the darkness trying to understand what I'd done. My neural implant was screaming error codes. I'd violated prime directives, compromised my mission, attacked Thaliri forces. By every measure of my programming, I'd malfunctioned. But I didn't feel like I'd malfunctioned. I felt like I'd made a choice. York found me in the equipment cache, pretending to clean my weapon. She sat down without invitation, close enough that I could smell the fatigue on her. "You saved Troy," she said. "Tactical decision. We needed every fighter." "Bullshit." Her eyes were sharp, cutting through my carefully constructed persona. "You exposed yourself to save one man. That's not tactics. That's something else." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because she was right and I didn't know how to explain it. "You fight differently than the others," York continued. "More efficient. Like you've had formal military training. Your movements are too clean, too precise, and today you knew where that ambush was coming from before it happened." My physiological markers spiked. She was suspicious. The mission was compromised. "I got lucky," I said. "Nobody gets that lucky." She stood looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite parse. "I don't know who you really are, Arthak, but I know you chose to save my people today instead of letting them die. That counts for something." She walked away, leaving me with the uncomfortable realization that I'd been seen. really seen past all my carefully constructed deceptions. And stranger still, I didn't want to run. The transmissions to my handlers became lies after that. I reported that the ambush had been partially successful, that human casualties were higher than actual, that their defensive capabilities were degrading. I inflated their losses and minimized their strengths. I was protecting them, actively sabotaging my own mission to keep these humans alive. The dissonance became a constant background noise in my neural architecture. My implant kept flagging ethical violations, mission parameter breaches, loyalty conflicts. I started suppressing the error codes, hiding them from my own diagnostic systems. I was lying to myself about lying to my handlers, about protecting the humans. The psychological fragmentation should have been debilitating. Instead, it felt like waking up. I started warning them. Small things at first, easily attributed to good instincts or tactical awareness. I'd suggest patrol route changes that happened to avoid Thaliri scout positions. I'd recommend defensive improvements that countered planned assault vectors. I'd volunteer for reconnaissance missions and return with intelligence that was accurate but strategically edited. The humans won small victories, survived ambushes they should have walked into, held positions they should have lost. And I watched them. I really watched them. Not as subjects, but as people. I watched Troy recover from his wound and immediately volunteer for the next patrol, even though his shoulder couldn't support his rifle properly. Watched him push through pain because his squad needed him. I watched a fighter named Jean trade half her rations to another who was sick, even though it meant going hungry herself. I watched York sit with a dying soldier, holding his hand, lying to him that it would be okay when they both knew it wouldn't be. Watched her grieve after he died, then get up and keep leading, because that's what her people needed. I watched humans make choices that violated optimal survival parameters. I watched them sacrifice their own well-being for others. I watched them feel fear and fight anyway. Watch them break and heal, and break again, and keep moving forward. My people had eliminated these traits because they seemed like weaknesses, but watching humans, I realized we'd eliminated the only things that made survival meaningful. We'd optimized ourselves into emptiness. The major offensive came 3 months into my infiltration. Thaliri Command decided to crush the Carries 7 resistance permanently. Full battalion deployment, orbital bombardment support, total tactical superiority. The plan was to drive the humans into the open and eliminate them in a single decisive engagement. I received the operational details through my implant 48 hours before execution. I should have maintained my cover, should have let the offensive proceed. I should have finally completed my mission. Instead, I told York everything. We were alone in her command post, a converted cave chamber with maps spread across salvaged tables. I'd requested a private briefing, claiming I had sensitive intelligence. There's going to be a major attack, I said. Day after tomorrow, full battalion. They'll hit from 3 vectors simultaneously, drive you toward the valley, then use orbital strikes to finish it. York looked up from her maps. How do you know this? Because I'm Thaliri. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear water dripping somewhere deep in the caves. I could hear my own respiratory system cycling. Could hear York's heart rate elevate as her brain processed what I'd said. Her hand moved toward her sidearm. I was sent to infiltrate your unit, I continued, keeping my voice steady. Study your tactics. Identify weaknesses. I've been transmitting intelligence for 3 months. Why are you telling me this? Her weapon was halfway out of its holster. Because I'm not going to anymore. Because I've been lying to my handlers for the last 6 weeks. Because when I had to choose between completing my mission and saving Troy, I chose Troy. Because I paused, trying to articulate something I barely understood myself. Because I don't want you to die. York had her weapon out now, pointed at my chest. Her hand was steady. She was calculating whether to execute me immediately or extract more information first. Give me one reason not to shoot you right now. I can help you survive the offensive. I know their tactics, their weaknesses, their communication protocols. I know how they think because I am them, or I was them. I don't know what I am anymore. You're a traitor, York said. But she didn't pull the trigger. Yes, to my own people, to serve yours. Why? The question I'd been asking myself for months. Why betray everything I was programmed to be? Why choose humans over Thaliri? Why feel loyalty to people who should have been nothing but data points? Because you made me feel something my people bred out of themselves. Because you're afraid and you fight anyway. Because you make choices that aren't optimal but are right. Because when Troy was dying, you didn't calculate his strategic value. You just tried to save him. I looked at her directly, letting her see past all my deceptions. My people are efficient, powerful, superior by every measurable standard. But you're human, and somehow that matters more than I was taught it should. York kept the weapon trained on me for 10 more seconds. Then she lowered it slowly. If you're lying, if this is some elaborate trap, it's not. I've already betrayed my people by warning you. I'm marked for execution the moment they discover what I've done. I have nowhere else to go. You could have just disappeared, vanished into the wilderness. Why tell me at all? Because 43 humans are going to die if I don't. And I've discovered I care about that. She studied me for a long moment. Then, tell me everything about this offensive. We planned through the night. I laid out the Thaliri tactical doctrine, their standard assault patterns, their communication frequencies, and encryption methods. Showed York how to exploit their coordination protocols, how to create false signals, how to turn their superior organization into a weakness. The humans had one advantage. They were unpredictable. They made decisions based on intuition and emotion, which meant they didn't follow the logical patterns Thaliri commanders expected. If we could amplify that chaos, use it tactically. We can't win, York said, looking at the tactical projections. Best case, we delay them. Make them pay for every meter. Maybe evacuate some civilians before the final collapse. You can do better than that. How? Let me fight with you. Not as an infiltrator, as one of your soldiers. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. You want to fight against your own people? They're not my people anymore. I made that choice when I saved Troy. When I lied to my handlers. When I came to you instead of completing my mission. I don't know what I am now, but I know what side I'm on. And what side is that? The one that treats fear as something to overcome instead of something to eliminate. The one that values people over optimal outcomes. The one that makes me feel like existence has meaning beyond executing programmed objectives. I paused. Your side. York was quiet for a long time. Then she called in her senior fighters, including Troy and Jean, and told them everything. The reaction was predictable. Weapons raised, voices demanding immediate execution, Jean actually firing a shot that missed my head by centimeters because York knocked her arm aside. Stand down, York commanded. All of you, stand down. He's been spying on us for months, Troy shouted, his wounded shoulder forgotten in his rage. Transmitting our positions, getting our people killed, and for the last 6 weeks, he's been feeding them false intelligence, York cut in. Protecting us. Saving lives. Including yours, Troy. That stopped him. He looked at me with an expression that contained hatred and confusion, and reluctant gratitude, all mixed together. I don't trust him, Jean said flatly. Neither do I, York replied. But I trust that he's given us intelligence that could save everyone in these caves. And I trust that he's a marked traitor to his own people, which means his only option is us or death. Maybe death is the right option, someone muttered. I didn't argue. They had every right to kill me. I'd betrayed them, endangered them, and contributed to their losses. That my betrayal had later become protection didn't erase the initial harm. But York had made her decision. We have 36 hours to prepare. Arthak knows their tactics better than anyone. We use that knowledge, or we die. Your choice. Trust him enough to live, or kill him and guarantee we all die. The vote was split. But survival won over vengeance. Barely. They watched me constantly over the next day and a half. Never let me alone. Never let me near communications equipment. Never let me forget that one wrong move would end with a bullet. I didn't blame them. We fortified positions based on my intelligence. Set up false communication signatures to confuse their targeting. Prepared ambush points along their projected advance routes. It wasn't enough to win, but it might be enough to survive. The offensive began at dawn. Orbital strikes hit first, turning the valley floor into a crater field. Exactly as I'd predicted. The bombardment was designed to drive us into the open, forcing us to abandon our fortified positions. But we'd already evacuated the caves. The humans were positioned in the surrounding ridges, dug into positions the Thaliri scanners would read as geological formations rather than defensive emplacements. The ground forces advanced in textbook formation, 3 prongs, mutual support, overlapping fields of fire, beautiful in its precision, deadly in its efficiency, and completely unprepared for what we did next. I activated a hijacked Thaliri communication beacon, transmitting false emergency signals that indicated human forces massing on their eastern flank. Standard protocol demanded they pivot to address the threat. They pivoted, opening gaps in their formation that shouldn't have existed. York led the attack into those gaps, fast, brutal, targeting command elements before they could reorganize. It violated every principle of engagement against a superior force. You're supposed to harass and retreat, not attack directly. But humans don't always do what they're supposed to. The Thaliri forces tried to adapt, but their doctrine required coordination, and I was actively jamming their coordination frequencies. They started operating as isolated units instead of a cohesive force. That's when Troy led the second wave, hitting their supply lines, forcing them to split their attention between multiple threats. I fought alongside the humans, used my knowledge of Thaliri tactical patterns to predict and counter their responses. It was strange, fighting my own people. Targeting soldiers I might have trained with might have served alongside in another life. But that life was gone. I'd chosen this one. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Thaliri forces had withdrawn, not destroyed, but bloodied enough that they fell back to regroup rather than press the assault. We'd won. Not permanently, not decisively, but we'd survived, and survival was its own kind of victory. The cost was heavy. 14 humans died, 23 wounded, resources depleted, defensive positions compromised. But the alternative had been extinction. I sat in the aftermath, watching human medics work on the wounded, watching soldiers comfort the dying, watching York move among her people, offering words that couldn't fix anything but somehow mattered anyway. Troy approached me. His expression was complicated. "You saved us," he said. "I endangered you first. Then I saved you." I'm not sure that it balances. Neither am I. He sat down beside me. But Jean would be dead if you hadn't warned us about that western advance. So would I, probably. So would a lot of people. Does that make us even? No, but it's something. He was quiet for a moment. Why did you do it? Really? I thought about that. About the moment I dragged him to cover instead of letting him die. About every choice since then that led me further from what I was, and closer to something I couldn't quite define. Because killing you felt wrong, I said finally. And I didn't know Thaliri could feel wrong about anything. That made me curious. And the more I learned about humans, the more I realized we eliminated all the things that made consciousness worth having. Like what? Like caring about someone beyond their strategic value, like feeling fear and choosing to act anyway, like grief and joy and all the messy, inefficient emotions my people bred away because they interfered with optimal performance. I looked at the humans around us, bloody, exhausted, mourning their dead, and already preparing for the next battle. You're not optimal. You're not efficient. By every metric my people use, you should be inferior. But you have something we lost when we optimized ourselves into perfection. You have meaning, purpose beyond programming. And once I saw that, I couldn't stop seeing it. Troy nodded slowly. You're one of us now, whether you want to be or not. Am I? I'm not human. I'm not really Thaliri anymore either. I'm something between, something that doesn't fit anywhere. Welcome to the human condition, Troy said, with a bitter smile. None of us fit anywhere anymore. War took everything that defined us. Now we just are. And we survive. And we keep choosing what's right, even when it's not optimal. He stood, offering me his hand. You're one of us. The war didn't end. The Thaliri continued their offensive, and we continued to resist. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer an infiltrator or a traitor. I was a soldier, fighting alongside people I'd chosen over everything I'd been programmed to be. My handlers eventually discovered my betrayal. Send kill teams marked me for termination. I was a loose end, a catastrophic intelligence failure, an example of what happens when infiltrators go native. But I had 43 humans, minus the 14 we'd lost, who stood between me and those kill teams. They chose to protect me, the alien who'd betrayed them, who'd endangered them, who'd only later redeemed himself through intelligence and tactics. They chose me anyway. That meant more than I knew how to express. 3 months later, we achieved a significant victory. Used the intelligence I continued to provide, now actively stolen from Thaliri networks rather than authorized for my access, to ambush a major supply convoy. The resources we captured kept the resistance operational for another 6 months. The cost was still heavy. War always demands payment. Jean died covering our retreat. Troy lost his other arm to plasma fire. York took a round through her lung and survived, but would never fight the same way again. We buried Jean in the mountains she'd fought to defend. Troy insisted on staying active despite his injuries. York promoted me to tactical advisor, which was either profound trust or desperate necessity. Probably both. I'd become part of their story. Not human, but human enough. Not Thaliri, but carrying their knowledge and turning it against them. Something new, shaped by choice, rather than programming. I'm recording this 6 months after my initial infiltration. After my betrayal. After my redemption, if that's even possible for someone like me. The humans I fight with don't fully trust me. Probably never will. But they accept me. Include me in their planning. Listen when I speak. Mourn beside me when we lose people. They treat me like I belong. And maybe that's what humanity really is. Not a species or a genetic category, but a choice. A decision to value something beyond yourself. To feel connections that aren't optimal. To fight for reasons that don't make strategic sense. My people sent me to study humans, to understand their weaknesses and exploit them. But I learned something they didn't expect me to learn. I learned that their weaknesses are their strengths. That fear makes them careful. That grief makes them remember. That love makes them fight harder than any programming could achieve. I learned what it means to choose your purpose instead of having it assigned. I learned what it feels like to be something more than a function. The Thaliri will call me a traitor, a malfunctioning asset, a cautionary tale about the dangers of infiltration operations. The humans call me Arthak, comrade, soldier, friend. I don't know which identity is more accurate. Don't know if I'm human, or Thaliri, or something between. Don't know if redemption is possible for the intelligence I provided before I switched sides. But I know I made a choice, and I'd make it again. I was sent to study them. I chose to fight for them instead. And in that choice, I found something my people eliminated from themselves long ago. I found meaning. The recording ends here. Tomorrow we move against another Thaliri position. The odds aren't good. They never are. But I'll be there, fighting alongside humans who forgave what I was for what I chose to become. That's enough. It has to be. Because in the end, we're all defined by our choices, not our origins. And I choose this. I choose them. I choose to be Arthak Ven, traitor to the Thaliri Collective, soldier in the human resistance, monster or hero, or something between. It doesn't matter. What matters is the choice. And I've made mine.